it's really exciting for us because we're all from the Southern California area. We're all Asian, you can see. And I've always wanted to put together a reading that is for kind of for us and like to talk about what it's like to grow up in the suburbs and be Asian American, and sort of be part of a city but not quite part of a city, and be in an area that's very safe but at the same time feels like it's not real and you're not really living a life that has everything that's exciting. So at least that's my point of view. And also I think at many points in our lives we all left at some point. So there are many reasons for that. So I just wanted to explore those thoughts and really get a wonderful group of writers together. And these are some of my friends and also like fantastic writers. So I'm so excited to do this reading together. And to have home crowd is really special too. I think this is the first time for me, so very exciting. Yeah. So thanks so much. So this is Asian Americans in Suburbia. We're all going to read for a few minutes and just sort of like enjoy our points of view, hopefully. And I'm very excited to hear because I haven't heard anything yet, so very excited to hear. So we're going to start it off. Oh. Also, thank you, Kenzo, and thank you, Hop Hop. I totally meant to say that at the very beginning. So generous of you to give us a space, and we love this space, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Woo!
I just want to echo all the thanks and love. Thank you so much to Jessica for bringing us all together. Thank you much everyone for coming out. I have the pleasure of introducing Ryka Aoki. Is a poet, composer, teacher, and novelist. Her latest novel, Light Among Common Stars, from Tor Books 2021, was an Alex, SCKA, and otherwise award winner, and was also a finalist for the Hugo, Locust, and Ignite Awards. She has an MFA in creative writing from Cornell University and is currently a professor of English at Santa Monica College. Please welcome Ryka.
Thanks everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Temple City. Basically. Who else is from Temple City? Can we get it? Hey, all right. So, who lives in Temple City? 100 years ago, well no, the reading started already, so it's 100 years ago, see, the answer would have been easy. The area had been opened with railroad money to be settled by German Americans and those comfortable living with them. 75 years ago, the Camellia Festival was started by the ladies of Temple City to make their community notable, beautiful, and officially incorporated. There had been a Miss Temple City contest, a pancake breakfast with firemen, an active Boy Scout troop, a student art show at the Temple City Library. There had been a cobbler and a hobby shop and a dance studio. Yiloi Chinese restaurant offered post-war Americans an exotic selection of sweet and sour pork, beef chop suey, and egg foo young. 50 years ago, kids from Temple City High School would stop at Fisher's Drugstore for a root beer from a soda fountain while the band was a pristine, while the band in the park played at the park was a pristine white pavilion where local performers played big bands, Swing, Elvis, and Tom Jones. And today, the Boy Scout troop was still there, as was the pancake breakfast, the art show in the library. There was the hobby shop, and Miss Temple City was now Miss Temple City Ambassador. There was the bike shop, even the dance studio. The park and the pavilion, now with a fresh coat of paint, still featured the music of big bands in Engelbert Humperdinck. Yet now, rather than Germans, one was far more likely to find Chinese, Vietnamese, Filipinos, a few Malaysians, a few more Vietnamese. Where there had been shoemakers and coffee shops and tailors, there were now Vietnamese bridal shops, boba places, and a new branch of Golden Deli Pho. And where Yiloi once stood, Hagu's Kitchen was now making stir-fried water spinach, Taiwanese fried noodles, and green onion sesame pie. And although they offered fried rice and hot and sour soup, at least once a week a staff member would have to inform a confused customer that they no longer served egg foo young. This evening, the park chattered with an uncommon energy. On most summer nights, older people gathered on familiar lawn chairs to hear familiar music. Sometimes they let their hair down to the Beatles tribute band, or very rarely they let it all go for some classic rock. But tonight, this evening was classical music under the stars. The atmosphere felt a little like Hollywood Bowl. Some had even brought picnic fixins from Trader Joe's, and the park was also full of younger, mostly Asian families who were either musicians or families of musicians. Landon Fung nibbled a donut. Whatever the reason, Ellen Seidel had hit upon a fantastic idea. Some of the older people in the chamber had wondered out loud how classical music would appeal to a younger crowd, but these kids were Asian. They were excited and eager to be there. Many had their music cases with them, and some were looking at sheet music, either in print or on their phones. And as he watched them, looking with awe at the bright pavilion stage, Landon Fung couldn't help but to feel proud, right now, to be living in Temple City. Across the park, Katrina heard applause. It was loud. Whoever had just played must have been amazing. They were all amazing, weren't they? She was playing in a showcase, the Classically Camellia Music Showcase. They were all probably brilliant and gorgeous, like anime characters. Katrina, she would never look like that, would she? Wait, Classically Camellia Music, but her music wasn't classical at all. What if they got mad? She was playing video game music. What if they stopped her in the middle of, Katrina, this is coming. What do you smell? What do you smell? Smell? Katrina took a breath. And there's a smell of donuts, the smell of grass, of car exhaust. Over there, some kids must be smoking weed. The grass was wet in some places. She could smell the mud. And then she took another breath. With the smell came other senses and colors, and there was a baby in the corner, and the sounds came back, and she could feel the evening cool against her. Miss Satomi squeezed her hand firmly. Now you are about to play these nice people some music, and they're eager to hear you. You're just sharing your music with others. That's it. Just sharing. Katrina looked into the park at the people enjoying a summer evening. Some were smiling. Few were peeking at their cell phones. Some were drinking boba or eating donuts. Gradually, her body became hers again. She played through some scales. She repeated a few bars from Shariak. She thought of the first time she had played in front of Miss Satomi with the dogs. Shizuka looked at her phone. She patted her student gently. Katrina, Astrid says it's time. And now, we have all the way from freaking Romania, which is different from the other Romanias. This is the freaking Romania. Rajnesh Chakrapani is the author of The Repetition of Exceptional Weeks, a chapbook, Brown People Who Speak English, and a collaborative novel, Manifesto in the Translations of Hospitality. He is a winner of a Panheim Translation Award, and his work is placed in Asymptote, The Offing, The Iowa Review, Lana Turner, The Margins, Speculative City, Tri-Quarterly, Literary North, Sequestrum, I'm feeling insecure already, and HTTP, crevice.ro. So, everybody please put it together.
Thank you so much for having me and to be here with this great community. And I would say my writing life started with community. I'm gonna read I actually met Jessica in a writing workshop, and that's how we organized this reading together. And it was through the work of friendship and community that I sort of became a poet. And I want to read, since my dad is here, I want to read a poem that I wrote for, surprisingly, I got into a writing program, and it's hard to be a poet without the support of institutions and community. And I was thinking a lot about the sounds and language of my childhood and my youth, and the stories my dad used to tell me about my relatives in India. And so I wrote a series of poems, and they're all entitled Uncles. And this is Uncles 2. Pleasant lifespans of sir, yes sirs, yes sirs. Issues, no issues in Gundas, faced with first class. Laws of unpaid timber, cons of what's next, what's next. Reuse momentum of mechanical Turk for a low-end advance. Shampoo in the bamboo grunt of I saw you, I saw you. Chitterama effects and insistence of pickle tap water. Being up of pens that sleep with Tartar pens. Thuggish statures in catamarans of khaki. Railway bandicoots squeezed in bored up typhoons. Verandas felt the chubby lab of smooth everywhere. And blue misspellings of we do this, we do this, we do this in daylight. I'm gonna read from my book, which came out last year. It's called A Repetition of Exceptional Weeks. This is also about a community I lived with. It was sort of thinking about place and movement, moving from California, the suburbs, to New York, and then to Romania, and the houses and people I met along the way. And let's see. It's actually a book with photography in it. It was an interesting kind of first book. This is sort of a collaborative book in many ways, as a lot of my work is. And what I'm writing about is the translations and sounds of language, and how I didn't actually speak the language that my parents grew up in, which was Tamil, and instead I learned a third language, which was Romanian. And I was thinking about this experience of listening to sounds and understanding them, and not learning that language and being able to speak back, and profiting from maybe some of the stories my parents told me, and maybe understanding them in a different way. Soft-spoken people complain and get nothing done. Direct language people and can-do people make roadblocks. A family knows nothing will ever be better, so they speak nicely to each other. While the other place is where family is constantly in a healthy competition to improve each day. Soft and peaceful language with terror lurking at the corner, and the hard and tough language of results. Spend everything at once and die speaking nicely to each other. Speak kindly, and there's always one more place to visit, even though the hard language knows you and I will never come here again. Language considers the fantasies of a place and talks about what will happen in the future when we buy a home, because the soft syllables like the feelings of walking around the centers of a place and the warmth of its corners. Offensive language asks to do things today, and the soft people leave it for a luckier time. Soft families know that institutions will always find a way to take back what they gave. Nations are not to be trusted. It is better to spend everything now, because you and I have different parts in this ending. Gentle language is in the circles and roads. Gentleness has a war at its borders. The news triggers memories of occupation. Soft language doesn't want any brainstorming, just sympathy for the instability, floating above the stress and tensions of illness where harsh language stops talking. So I'll just read a couple more from this book. In school, you and I were taught that a place is a construct. So how do you attack it? When did you learn about a nation? Nothing in the end is made up. You attack a place because it is part of your periphery. You set up tables and run back and forth to find old packaging so you can be aligned with people who believe in your place. You tell people you will support them with money for weapons. You have family backing. You can write messages because someone will underwrite your mistakes. Be strong for your mother. The city is full of people who speak a different language. The different language is your language. You bump into a support group that is in a neighboring nation. You think because you are a neighbor, you can just move your table. You go around and add words about joining a place. Like the way your father tells a story, he leaves the most important historical moments as an aside. Like the way he never throws away anything. In his kitchen, he collects dozens of thermoses, and you ask him why he does. Why does he need so many? And he answers the extra thermoses are gifts to give people. Translation is not just between strong languages. Words travel through jumping off places. Look down and see something later because you haven't learned to feel in a certain way. Maps make your home look like other people's cities. You feel you are in a children's story, and you think with a kind of heroism. Make homeland in places that try to destroy homeland. Something opening up and a failure fills in the gap. A map with markings shot through with holes. The maps might be torn, but that's where the feelings are hidden. Before you begin to translate, you learned of many dead writers who predicted how things are going to happen. Thank you. So I'm happy to introduce our next reader, Bonnie Chau. She's a writer and translator from the OC and the author of the short story collection, All Roads Lead to Blood. She edits at Public Books, Evergreen Review, and Four Columns. Teaches creative writing and translation and serves on the boards of the American Literary Translators Association, ALTEP, and Art Farm, Nebraska. She has lived in New York City for the last 12 years, but will forever be loyal to the South.
Thanks everyone for being here. This is fine.
Yeah, and thank you to Pop and Jessica for organizing, and all my fellow readers. So I'm going to read, I love this topic, Suburbia and Asian Americans in it. I'm going to read a little bit from a short story titled A Golden State. These are fiction, but my fiction is very non-fiction-y fiction. The city of Irvine had only been around for 10 years when my parents moved there. It was just now celebrating its 35th birthday. It was the paradigm of sterile, new, clean, safe, planned suburb. Sprawling California ranch homes, California schools set against a landscape that still had a bit of a feel of the frontier, still held seemingly infinite expanses of chaparral hills, tumbleweeds, golden poppies, coyotes, quails, and roadrunners. Hawks perched on lampposts. Mostly, I remember liking being in our mild Southern California nature. It was a break from my sister, from my completely uncomprehending parents. It was quiet and let me be quiet. It asked nothing of me. My grandfather had given my sister and me these National Geographic children's pop-up books. I remember in particular, Creatures of the Desert World, rabbits, lizards, coyotes, rattlesnakes. It looked like my home, the same distinct color palette, the same rough textures. The house my parents lived in now, they had moved into after I finished high school. A house in Newport Ridge North.
technically Newport Beach, just south of the Irvine border, a gated community developed by the fine, colorless folks at Pelican Hill Real Estate. A house, also known as luxury property. Newport Ridge North was Provençal themed, meaning really pretty inscrutable to anyone who didn't speak French. Street names like Fayence, Mousset, Nerval, Saint-Rez, Bandol, Tapascon, Vincennes. And you were given a list of trees that you were allowed to plant in your front yard, and recommended ground cover and flowers and shrubs. You were fined, or if you, or more realistically, your gardener, didn't keep your grass green and mowed, though in times of drought, watering schedules were put into place. Every time I entered the community, the huge gold letters of Newport Ridge North set against a wall of stone slabs, the gatehouse where the security guard waved, the agonizing slowness of the clinking gate as it rolled open. I ogled the smooth, spotless blackness of the asphalt inside this Newport Ridge North. So freshly black, I always thought it had just been raining, when really the homeowners association fees must have been funneled into the very urgent task of constantly paving and repaving the streets. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. In December, the week after Thanksgiving, we had a heat wave paired with a blast of late in the season Santa Ana winds. The sous chef and I went to the Quail Hill Multi-Cinema Shoppertainment Plex to watch Saw 3, but we got there too late, so we got beers at the bar with a million beers while we waited for the next showing. After, we went to the Quiet Woman, the bar on PCH that has the statue out front of a headless Victorian-looking woman cradling her own head in the crook of her arm. After the Quiet Woman, it's 2 a.m. I down a glass of water at the bar. "You okay?" the sous chef asks, patting me on the back. I nod. Take one deep breath, 2. We walk out the back exit to the parking lot. I shut my eyes for a few seconds to black out the whirling. "See you at work tomorrow," he shouts. He is already across the way at the next row of cars, walking towards his white pickup truck, which seems to be glowing, a bona fide alien spacecraft. I know 4 other people who drive white pickup trucks because this is Southern Orange County. "Yeah," I exclaim, giving him a half wave. I stab my key at the lock of my car several times, get in, sit down, adjust my mirrors, check my lights, check the gas. Halfway home, while I'm still on PCH, I find myself swallowing. A sour kind of swallowing, frantic. My head is like an awful sandy cloud, filled with something putrid and green. But that is not what you're supposed to think about when you're driving back to your parents' house, drunk, and need to throw up, and the ghost of a cold sweat is coating your body in a gross, creepy way. You're supposed to get it together. I roll down all the windows, turn the radio to 88.1 jazz station. Handle it. You are already nothing. Remind yourself that you are nothing, because sometimes you forget. Sometimes you haven't been reminded and you start thinking that you are something. I turn on to Chambord. I wave to the guard. I swallow, don't swallow. The gate clinks. The gate begins to part itself from the wall. It begins to roll, no sweat, all the time in the world. I blink. I wave my hand through the window, fanning in some outside air. I turn on to Bargemont. There is a parking space at the top of the hill, which I take, because even in my drunken state, I know better than to drive down the street, all the way down the cul-de-sac to the actual house. My mother has ears like a jackal. The sound of the tires or engine or car door shutting in the suburban Provençal silence could wake her. I park. I can feel the vomit. I grab my purse, jump out of the car, start running down Cabellon. Throw it up, throw it out, it can't be swallowed. Halfway down the street, I nearly stop, heave, doubled over. But I look down at the sidewalk. It is so white and spotless. I look around at the empty street, the olive trees silvery, the French lavender poised and still. The asphalt is black. The lawns are perfect. The sidewalk is so clean. Everything is spotless. There is not a sound. I can't throw up here, I realize. This is not just some side street or alley. People will hear me. The neighbors. There cannot be a splotch of vomit tainting the blank streets. This is Cavaillon. This is the chaparral of my childhood. This is a golden state. I hold it in. I resume sprinting. Thank you. And now I will introduce Jessica Kashiwabara. Jessica is an editor and writer from the San Gabriel Valley. And wait for the cheers. Her essays and poems have appeared in Black Renaissance Noir, Midwestern Gothic, Pink, Tribes, and Volume 1 Brooklyn. She was an invited writer for Building Empathy, a community-based education project for the Pasadena Unified School District, and is currently at work on a collection of essays. Please welcome Jessica.
Thank you for the introduction. As I'm listening, it's really interesting. I think you're gonna maybe see a through line of all of our stuff. We've got cars, there's a car in mine. So this essay actually started in the workshop that Raj and I met in, so there's a lot of full circle stuff happening. I've condensed it, so let's see how this goes. Back home in Suburbia. I've always resisted coming home to the suburbs, like I needed to prove something to myself first, or to bring something back with me that I could look at and say, see, this is why I had to leave. After 20 years in New York City, I've learned to live in the suburbs. I've returned to live in the suburbs of my childhood, in the San Gabriel Valley. It is small, but the smallness is a comfort now. I hear the voices of my grandparents and my mother in the kitchen walls of my childhood home, in the fruit trees and soil of my grandfather's bonsai, still thriving in the backyard, on walks in familiar streets that bring me back home. Growing up, our family home was always full of piles. Somehow, every flat surface became the perfect place for a new pile. Books, magazines, newspapers, bills, junk mail, napkins, soy sauce packets, and empty boxes. Everything kept and stacked for potential later use or future plans to recycle. Perhaps wartime trauma made my family hyper-aware of not wasting anything, reusing what we could. We kept one presentable room for when guests visited, with flat surfaces to be dusted and cleaned for plates of cookies and arabe crackers and cups of tea. Behind the couch, neatly arranged bookcases held a set of encyclopedias my grandfather proudly purchased for my mother that my sister and I used for class assignments, school portraits and a picture of a Santa Claus, a collection of Kokeshi dolls, my father's golf trophies, a stand-up piano my sister and I took lessons to play, a stereo system complete with a karaoke machine, record player, cassette, CD player, and a reel-to-reel tape recorder. When guests came over, we'd make sure the bathroom was clean, and then we'd take all the piles from the living room into our bedrooms and close all the doors. Guests would move through the clean hallways between closed doors into a clean bathroom. This still hasn't changed. I always wondered what it'd be like to have a home where everything was neatly organized and tucked away, where every room was presentable and the books and the doors were kept wide open for guests to peer in and judge. But shouldn't some things remain private? My mother died 8 years ago, and her clothes still hang in the closet. It's been years since they were last touched, last worn, that they last covered her body. I've tried to donate her dresses.
Sorry.
I didn't think that was gonna happen. Okay. I tried to donate her dresses, jackets, pants, and shoes. Things I know I won't wear myself. Each time it's a struggle. I started a bag to donate, and my father saw a black corduroy jacket laying on top. This was your mom's favorite jacket. Are you sure you won't wear it? He asked me. I'm not gonna wear it. Someone else should have it, I said. He looked down in disappointment, or perhaps in mourning. This was just one jacket out of 20 or more. I couldn't fill the rest of the bag. If we get rid of the things our loved ones once loved, will we forget the small things that made them whole? Will we be left with only our versions of them? Is that such a bad thing? Excellent at code switching, my mother was an ESL teacher at my elementary school and active in the PTA with the other white suburban mothers who loved her homemade California rolls. Then on the weekends, she'd sing her favorite enka songs in karaoke classes and recitals with her Japanese friends. My mother had a fiery spirit about her and was ready for a fight when it came to anyone questioning our Americanness. When I was 15, my mother let me practice driving with my learner's permit in our light blue Dodge Caravan. There was one evening when we went out for an errand after dinner. It was dark. We were going to Temple City Plaza, only a few minutes from the house. We picked up some prescriptions at the CVS, and then I pulled the car out of the parking lot and turned right to Broadway, the south side of the plaza. This was a shortcut my parents liked to take since the streets were quiet and there were less signals to slow us down. I knew it well and clicked the right turn signal with my fingers. As we approached the end of the block, a car sped around us and peeled around the corner. I slammed on the brakes, my eyes bugging out of my head. Oh my God, that was crazy, I said to my mother. I looked over at her, but her eyes stared out through the windshield at the car. Go after that car, she said, without looking away. I didn't want to argue with her, and part of me wanted to risk the chase, not knowing what outcome we were seeking. I punched the gas pedal and we chased the car down the street. The car sped up and made a right turn on Las Tunas and then a swift left into a small parking lot in the back of a line of small businesses. My mother knew there was no way out for them. They gingerly turned their car around and faced our headlights glaring at them now. My mother opened the door and began to step out. What are you doing? I asked with a mix of fear and disbelief. I'm going to talk to them, she said, as if it was the most obvious thing to do. Her 5'2" frame stood in front of their headlights, her tiny shadow behind her. They revved their engines, cut around us, and sped off. My mother walked slowly back to the car. I got the license plate number, she said. The last words my mother repeated to me the night before she died were, "Take care of your father." That became her mantra as she lay in her hospital bed those last months. Take care of your father. I would always reply, "Don't worry, we will." At my father's house on the weekends, my sister and I take turns making dinner with my mother's old pots and pans. We move the piles of junk mail, bills, and AARP magazines from the table to make room for the meals. On a small table by the couch is an altar for my mother, a photo of her smiling wide that my father took on a sunny day at a restaurant in Dana Point. He says it looks like she's speaking to us. I laugh to myself at how my mother is still pulling the strings in this family, even from beyond. Somehow she got me to move back in a way that didn't feel forced or obligated. I wanted to come home. I needed to come home to make our family whole again, to make me whole again in a new form. We are taking care. I don't know how you did it, Mom, but you brought me home again. So we have our last reader tonight. Shelley Wong is the author of As She Appears, which was published by Yes Yes Books in 2022 and was longlisted for the National Book Award for Poetry and was a winner of the Lambda Literary Award. She has received fellowships and support from Kundiman, McDowell, and Montalvo Arts Center. Please welcome Shelley.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that introduction and that beautiful piece, and everyone for your work. This is a really special event. I'm going to read 3 poems that are from Long Beach, the LBC, which will come up. This is the first poem in my book. For the living in the New World. There are so many ways to explore a forest, over clover clusters, past skunk cabbages, to a field where we listen for a ghost of song. The hypergreen periphery is the opposite of Los Angeles on fire. Any tree can become a ladder. These trees have too many branches, but it is not my place to revise them. I may be happiest improvising the language a body can make on a dance floor. We are just learning how female birds sing in the tropics. Spring insists we can build the world around us again. How has love brought you here? My head is heavy from the crown. And this is actually the first poem I wrote for the new manuscript. It's a braided poem, which I wrote in 2018, and it's called How to Live in Southern California. Stay in the car and move from one air-conditioned location to another chill location, perhaps in a tour of movie theaters. After a long winter back east, 76% of California's population is facing abnormal dryness or drought. My family went to Palos Verdes to look for gray whales, where the water was rough and edged with mansions. As of June 19, 2018, 3% is affected by extreme or exceptional drought. The Pacific Ocean is a stage for an altar or a talk show. On the boat, my mother said, "Don't turn your back on the ocean." Drive down PCH in a long, curving line, past sandal palaces, neon seafood shacks, and offshore oil rigs, while listening to Fleetwood Mac and Frank Ocean. Since the 1800s, my family has lived along the West Coast, from Seattle to San Francisco to Long Beach, where the sun so often set without our watching. At 3 a.m., there's always another milkshake, another strike to roll in the bowling alley of an Art Deco hotel. After discussing polygamy in Utah in 1875, President Ulysses S. Grant said, I invite the attention of Congress to another, though perhaps no less an evil, the importation of Chinese women, but few of whom are brought to our shores to pursue honorable or useful occupations. The spectrum of drought conditions is color-coded from yellow to dark red. In Los Angeles, people drive for the experience of driving, to be at the beach and in the hills within the same hour. The drought website is maintained by the National Drought Mitigation Center. Walk out to the end of the pier. The good life is when you don't feel the weather. With sunglasses, you own a particular glamour. And that excerpt from Ulysses S. Grant was from the PAGE Act, which was the first anti-immigration legislation to prevent Chinese women from coming to this country because they didn't want the Chinese laborers to build families. And I'm fourth generation Chinese American, so my ancestors were able to build families. And the next book is about their history. So to close, I'll read my ode to growing up Asian American in SoCal in the 80s and 90s and like Y2K era. It's called All Beyonces and Lucy Lou's, which is an Outkast song from 25 years ago. So yeah, that Y2K era. And this is a good crowd for these references that are going to show up. Where are you from? The LBC. Can you speak? Hakao Sumai. I am 4 generations deep in America. Dial up the boba to 75% sweetness, 50% ice. What's your people called juk? Chinese people skip the 4th floor. Don't trust a pho place without a number in its name. Enter June, Lena, Rose, and Waverly. Enter Lucy Liu and my girl Drew. Lucky white ceramic cats, collect what's owed. Hello Kitty, little twin stars, my melody. Do you know Keanu Reeves is part Chinese? His Hawaiian name means cool breeze over the mountains. The most exquisite loneliness is Maggie Chong riding in a cheongsam as she ascends a staircase. In my domestic dress, I calculate my proportions with finesse, like a G6. Tell me the best midnight restaurant in Chinatown. We run with the yellow Power Ranger, eat turkey joke after Thanksgiving. Enter Claudia Kishi licking salt off her fingers. Did you watch Keanu in River Phoenix in my own private Idaho? Is my eyeliner even? I can't tell Mandarin from Cantonese. Drink hot water to flush the fat. How did Michelle Kwan change you? Fields of gold forever, Mulan against the world. Are you wearing black tonight? Cheapo Motto is playing at the Bronze. Chinese love cash. Little girls dressed in pink and red.
Oh gosh, thank you all for the beautiful reading. So we're going to transition into a short conversation. And then if you can so I think you both have copies. Yeah, Shelley and Ryka have copies of the books if you're interested in signed copy. I'm sure we're happy to accommodate. So we're going to sit and chat. Pretend like this is not a transition at all. Oh no. How do I do this? Just unclip it?
Unclip it.
Oh.
Should I take this one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So we'll share the microphone. Thanks for sticking with us, live stream.
Yeah, thank
There's
you.
a crowd here. Awesome.
Oh, you think they're gonna believe that sound effect? I'm just kidding.
So since we're here, and this is an event I put together because I selfishly just want to talk to you all and share our stories. And I feel like we already there was a lot of connection already in our stories. So I'm excited, and I think we agree that we all have to answer this question of what is your favorite go-to suburban restaurant chain that brings back childhood memories? Do you want to start, Bonnie, or is that too much pressure? Okay. Well, this is Shelley's idea.
Okay. So mine is Yoshinoya. There's photos of me as a baby in the high chair, like attacking the rice in Yoshinoya. And there was, I think we went to one in like downtown Long Beach, and it was like a big deal when they expanded, but now I think there are fewer. There were more in Northern California. There was one in Japantown that was really bad, but it's gone, and now the only one is in Cupertino. It's pretty good. I door dashed it 2 nights ago because it's hard to get in Northern California. Because I live in San Francisco. So yeah, I would say, yeah, Yoshinoya, Gyudon, the original people, forever. Yeah.
A lot come to mind, but I think I remember the most soup plantation. I don't know if it's around anymore, but we would go pretty frequently.
So yeah, I mean, for me, my family comes from Hawaii, and so it's always that toss-up between L&L or Ono, Hawaii barbecue. I like the macaroni potato salad better at Ono, but you know the food tastes better at L&L, yeah. So you know, right now, a lot of times when you stay on the mainland, you kind of miss your Hawaii food. But, and sometimes still it's kind of mainland style Hawaii food, yeah, because no one can get the ingredients, yeah. But, you know, and also, you know, my mom passed, yeah. And so, and I can cook all this stuff, but sometimes, you know, hambag ya cook. So, during those times, it's good just to go and maybe have some spam and make spam and eggs and rice and relax, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess mine also is Soup Plantation. The one that we went to was like before it used to be called Soup Exchange. And I know in other places it was called Sweet Tomatoes. But really it was like, I don't know, I think I learned from that, like in Vegas buffets. I'm like, buffets, yeah. Yeah, there's like strategy involved, you know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll just say, if anyone remembers Tokyo Lobby in Tokyo
Oh
City, that's where you go to, yeah. Because for some reason, you know, there's a lot of good Japanese food out there, but that's where my parents would bring anyone who was visiting to Tokyo Lobby, and they had the giant boats. Yeah, you order only when you have a lot of people. It was very exciting. There's one still. Oh,
Still got
my heart. Temple City one is gone now.
Yeah, I know.
RIP. So, okay, so now we'll get a little bit serious. How do you feel your work has been influenced by the insider-outsider identity of growing up in the suburbs? And did you ever feel trapped or feel the need to leave for more diversity or landscape? I did.
I mean, I can start. I guess starting with the second part, I think there was no question that I was going to leave. It wasn't, I think that was the expectation, I guess. And I'll maybe just end that there. But as for the first part of your question, I think I've been extremely informed, like personally and in my writing, by the feeling of, I guess, the inside-outside dichotomy. I think, you know, it's interesting because, like, Orange County kind of got put on the map by the TV show, and I felt that the immediate response was always like, oh, you know, I'm sure it was nothing like that. And in some ways it was nothing like that, but in some ways there were, because I think particularly because I lived kind of in South Irvine, kind of bordering the beach cities like Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, those were very close to where I lived. I think a large part of, I guess, what I felt made me an outsider was how white it was, which is also, I think, different with the, you know, there's like the diversity of kind of all of our experiences. It's huge, right? I think it's changed, but in the 80s and early 90s, Irvine and that area was extremely white. My elementary school was probably 95% white, and middle school and high school were more diverse, but I think by the end of elementary school, like, I don't know, I guess it's a little bit dramatic to say, but I felt like the damage had been done, you know?
Yeah, I grew up, I don't know if I mentioned, but I grew up in Cerritos. And when I was growing up, it was already like very Asian. Yeah. A lot of people know it from the Auto Square, but it was very Asian, and even the high school I went to was like easily like predominantly Asian. And what I write about a lot is mostly because I try to fund myself as a writer, so I write these grant proposals, and the technical way maybe I would say it is I think a lot about centers and peripheries. So I always thought I was on the periphery. Cerritos was not an important place on the outside of a major like hub. There weren't any writers, artists, or like interesting things happening. And as I grew up, I sort of wanted to invert that like idea and think of the periphery as the center. And to answer your question, I for a long time I fled the suburbs of Los Angeles, and I lived in great cities like New York. I lived in the Midwest for a while, and now I live in the very center of Bucharest, which is the capital of Romania. And I write a lot how like the city affects my walking. So I walk differently in Cerritos. In the center of Bucharest, I step outside of our apartment, and I'm immediately in like a very like a promenade, like there's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people from all over the world come to that area. So I think a lot of this concept of growing up, that I always thought I was an outsider and I wanted to be part of the center, but I'm re-examining that through my walking practice through cities.
Let's see. Growing up in Long Beach, I would say there were always at least another Asian person, but it became like predominantly, my friend group became predominantly Asian in middle school and high school. My high school was like super diverse. We were like 25 strong, like Thai, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, South Asian. Yeah. And then, but I think I always, because of being a reader and going into my imagination, curious about other landscapes is my part of your question. And the forests, fairy tales, kind of like the lure of the East Coast and New York for writers. I went to Berkeley for undergrad, which also had lots of Asians, but the English department was very white, so that was actually, I'd say, where, yeah, there was more damage. Yeah, I would say like, yeah, I went to Berkeley, I like the city, but yeah, about the education. But now it's better. Now it's like a dream because it's Kathy, Park Hong, and Solmaz Sharif are the English department. So I just want to like reincarnate back. But yeah, it's interesting because I also lived in New York in my 20s, and then turned 30 and became very tired and moved back. But yeah, it's interesting what you said about walking. I feel like I have that like New York energy, which I get really frustrated, especially on like public transit with other people in San Francisco. But yeah, so yeah, I think I always felt connected with the Asian community, but then also in terms of like inside or outside, being fourth generation, which I think is more known in California, the deep history of Chinese labor and Chinese exclusion in the 1800s, early 1900s, but it's still, not everyone knows about it, and so kind of like the legibility of my Asianness or being Asian enough, and also like I'm queer but I can pass, so like being like queer enough and like what that is like, and feeling apart or just adjacent to, and spaces where are for like white queer people or white men versus, yeah, so there's all these kind of inside outside nuances that I've had to navigate, and so I think I've just kind of centered my own experiences and communities and wrote the poems that I wanted to have as a younger person, rather than center the negative feelings of outsider, insider, instead centered. So it's as she appears, like she's the main character, she's not a McCoy, she is, yeah, an exciting person.
And thank you for bringing up Keanu, because if you didn't, Bonnie and I, either of us are going to bring up Keanu.
Should have invited him.
Yeah, crazy.
You might have shut up.
He has his own press.
I know. Oh, Bonnie and I know a lot about Keanu.
So, I've been on the inside now. I'm not too impressed with the inside. You know, it's just every time I have hung out with the cool kids, they were kind of boring. I was, you know, and with the Asian community, I got bullied by them too. And it's fun being a queer Asian, everybody hates you. You know, and so I have no particular love for communities and inherently as communities. You know, my feeling has always been just go build my own house. And I think what that's given me a lot is just freedom. You realize that your oppressions and your happies and all of that are just kind of materials you can use to tell a better story. And then you can just transform it all into love, right? So I've never been impressed by the city, but I've enjoyed the city. Never particularly, well, I have been impressed by Hawaii. But it's one of those things where I don't feel I need to be anywhere. I'm a writer. Plop me down wherever I am, I'll create something nice, and maybe if it's really good, I'll even show it to you. And I don't know, I think I've just pretty much, I think, I know, you know, I know too many people as a queer, too many dead people that, you know, that were hurt by, I've known them who've been inside, outside, through, I miss them all. And so basically, I don't know, social, you know, being someplace, looking at this particular community, I give no respect. It's really, I don't respect the boundaries. I respect the people, don't get me wrong, but I don't respect the need to be anywhere. You put me, you know, I just spent 2 months in Reykjavik. I wrote like, you know, 30,000 words, we're good. And so that's just the way I feel. I think when you're a queer writer, you can always be displaced. And rather than yearn, spend the few years, that short time we all have on this planet yearning for something else, I kind of say, F it, I'm just gonna write about what I have. Cause you know, and so, cause I'm a human being, human beings do a lot of cool stuff. The other thing that kind of came up with everything is anybody familiar with the writer Jonathan Gold?
The food writer?
The food writer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think Jonathan Gold was really good at helping me understand how beautiful my world was. Sometimes you need somebody from the outside to come in and tell you, hey, that shit you had is good. And so maybe for me, always being the outsider can remind people who are inside that, you know, you're living in a pretty neat place too.
We should end on that note. So wonderfully said. But I want to thank everyone's time for coming and supporting us tonight, and we had such a great time. I hope you all did too. And thank you all to my readers. It was so great to spend the time with you and hang out. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Papa.